Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. Things are popping up all over the screen, so I apologize. We are broadcasting live right here in the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee, who have been a part of our journey for a few years now. So thank you, Folgers. We couldn't do it without you. We wouldn't want to do it without you. You're like family. So thank you. Also, big thank you to Justin Snicker, a.k.a. Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for the contribution of his music, his time, and his voice for the intro that you just heard. So thank you, thank you. Please check him out on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. He specializes in, of course, Halloween, horror, sci-fi, dark wave electronic music. And he is an award-winning composer. You're going to get some good stuff there. So also big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind our banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror genre, does amazing stuff. So realistic, honestly. But he does a lot of amazing commission pieces of every type as well. So tonight we welcome back our dear friend, Jack Roth. You guys, he's been on here so many times. He's been on a few times with, John Semple. There's just a lot. There's a lot of stuff behind this guy, and he's going to be talking about one of his earlier books, actually, which is Ghost Soldiers of Gettysburg. And I love Gettysburg. I have to tell you, I've had the pleasure of going a couple of times, and I've had just an amazing experience myself. And anybody who's really, sensitive is going to pick up literally on everything, because it's not just the battlefields. I mean, people were in the streets, they were dying, the battles were taken all over the place into houses. Houses were set up as hospitals. The college was set up as a hospital. I mean, this is the whole town. And if you talk to most of the residents there, most of them have had experiences, which is, I mean, come on. How crazy is that? That's insane. But I mean, Battlefield is phenomenal. They have a great tour that you can drive around the whole area, go completely around where the most of the battle had taken place. It was complete carnage. And I think that's one thing we have to remember, is to not lose sight of that. The fact that there were people here who were, this is a battle. This is war. It's not pretty. It's sad. It's terrifying.
It's heavy.
Yeah. You get really like the whole gambit of stuff there. It's just unreal. But, anyway, how you doing, Bubbles? Sorry from all my gloom and doom.
No, I feel the same. Just heavy. I wish I could be bubbly today. I think it's just the time of year is getting to me. But I feel like a lot of people, and I said to my husband, it was too much family time.
Oh boy. For most people who don't know, Canada just had Thanksgiving over the weekend, so Bubbles had family time. So yeah, that will do it for sure. That will definitely do it. So frightening.
But also as an empath, and at one of the get-togethers, there was almost 30 people there. So that's a lot for me to go and walk into.
Right.
And a lot of people love to ask questions.
Right.
And I'm fine with that, but not on my thing.
Yeah. See, I just keep having the wine. It's all about the wine.
I
And then it's
didn't
just
I
like, I
didn't
don't
drink just in
care.
case I had to drive
Yeah.
home, so I didn't
Yeah.
have a drink, and I was scared that if I did, I'd be no filter, because that's
Well,
me.
you have to
So,
be like the weird person. Well, everybody comes to me anyway for weird stuff because they
yeah,
know, like, I know a lot about weird
I
stuff
I
or
don't
lots
mind.
of stuff. And I just like talk about really obscure, weird stuff. And all of a sudden, people just, well, we're just going to go sit down over there. It's like,
Yeah,
all right, I
exactly.
win.
I just
So,
I'm very observant of who is around me at the same time that they're
right,
asking.
right,
So you
right.
have to be careful because sometimes people don't want to hear that conversation and they're stuck at the table with you. So
Hmm.
yeah,
There's always a way. There's
I'm
always a way.
in
So,
family. So yeah,
oh my God, you're killing me.
I'm
Well,
used to it.
without further ado, our guest and friend is there. He is. How are you?
Hi, Jack.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good.
Oh,
How are
we're
you?
good. We're good. Busy
Can you hear
day, but
me?
yeah.
Yeah, my lights
So
all went out. Sorry.
I was having some Wi-Fi problems about 20 minutes ago. I hope everything stays good.
Oh
Oh,
no, you sound really good.
Okay,
yeah.
thanks. Yeah, it's good
Yeah.
now. So yeah.
Oh, good. So, how
Okay.
are you? I mean, you had to be evacuated for a while, didn't you?
Not us. We live
Right.
inland, so in
Right.
Orlando, so we didn't have to evacuate, but we did go. My parents live in South Florida,
Right.
so we went down there for a couple days, and oddly enough, we almost drove right into all the tornadoes.
Oh,
About
Wow.
if we would have left 2 hours later, we would have been literally dodging tornadoes on I-95. So
oh,
That's
it was just
wow.
scary.
crazy. But
Wow.
once that happened down there, it was very it was fine down there. And up here, Orlando fared very well. So,
Oh,
but
good.
St. Pete, not good. Listen, there's always places that get absolutely annihilated, and it's
Hmm.
Yeah,
terrible,
the closer you
terrible.
are to the Gulf, the worse it is.
Mm.
You're just out in the open. You're just like a peninsula, right? So
It's a
it's
big
a hard
target
place.
for hurricanes for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have friends down there, so it was touch and go for no contact for a while, and it's
Mm.
Yeah,
scary.
and it's like late September through the beginning of October is horrible. Like because
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
always something, and
Mhm.
it's hard to focus. You know how it goes. You have a lot of work to do, and look, listen, I'm not comparing this at all to what happened in North Carolina, and I'm
Got
not,
friends there, yeah.
lives were lost. Lives were lost here from the
Yes.
tornadoes.
Mhm.
Um, but at the very least, what happens is you don't know what's happening for 5-6 days, and then you're
Mhm.
lucky if you don't lose power.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
you're just cut off
Mhm.
from the outside world pretty much.
yeah,
It's just very devastating. Well, we're glad you're okay.
Yeah.
thank you,
So,
appreciate that.
yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So people are chiming in. So tonight, we're talking about your book. I'm just going to put this up. Ghost Soldiers of Gettysburg. Very near and dear to me. I've gone there a couple of times and had an incredible experience in the hotel I was staying at. And it was a new hotel, which doesn't really mean anything, but I went to sleep that night. I woke up to it got really, really cold in the room, and the whole room was filled with a mist. And I saw a white, like an orb, just floating through it all. And I'm watching this going, saying with my girlfriend, hey,
Yeah.
and she's just like, what is going on? I'm like, I don't know. And all of a sudden, the whole room just cleared. And then we could hear, almost like not even just normal footsteps going up in the hallway, up and down. It was just a lot of stomping around. And of course, it was a paranormal convention there that weekend. So everybody was out there probably just like, hey, fully investigating. So everything was being amped up, but I thought that was really interesting with my first few hours there.
Mhm.
But
It's on my
And your
bucket
story
list.
is not a unique one, right? Like
oh,
that's what got me into this because my whole life had heard about Gettysburg, and listen, there are a lot of haunted places, there are houses, there are the battlefields, obviously,
mhm,
but
Mm.
I had always heard that stories from Gettysburg. It's like you go there and you can't even believe it. You can't, because you don't, even if you don't, you're not, something always happens to people, and it could be emotional. It could be an emotional response. It could be or physical, where you're seeing something or you're hearing something or something's touching you, or etc. So,
Yeah.
and that's why this was my first book. So I actually wrote this quite a while ago, and I joined teams with the co-author Patrick Burke, because he was doing the same. He started doing the same thing. He would he was doing investigations up there on the battlefield, and I had been for 3 years, maybe longer, 4 years or so, literally doing weekend events there, where I take a group of people. And I'd have the event, I'd set up the event. It's like a weekend event. And, we did a ton of experiments and went to different parts of the battlefield. And what I was doing, I wanted to document it all. And then once I had enough, and then I met Patrick, and he's like, well, I have all my own stuff. And we're like, well, let's write this book. And that's kind of how the book came to be. And yeah, I mean, I can, this is like my favorite topic. So I have a lot of favorite topics, but this is amazing.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, a lot of people have experiences there. When you hear, they go to investigate, or they do that yearly convention that's there. We have friends that go to that. I'm just amazed at how many people have experiences. And sometimes I think, I hope it's residual, because your heart, right? If they're still reliving this, it's heartbreaking.
Well, we have to bear in mind the tragedy. We have to take it. Everybody wants to get there and investigate and poke and prod, but we have to remember, there's a tragedy of war, great loss of life, and you have to treat it with the utmost of respect.
Yeah. And I think that, here's the thing with Gettysburg, and this is why it's so haunted. You have this, it's one of the seminal events in the history of the United States. So we have history. Some say we have a young history compared to Europe, obviously. All right. Europe has way more battlefields than we do. But you have the nature of battlefields, right? Young men, for the most part, are being injured and dying, horrible, painful deaths at this location. So there's a lot of emotional imprint, if you will, a lot of emotional energy associated with it. But when you talk about Gettysburg, someone told me this once, and it was one of the most interesting things I'd ever heard. Because when we talk about the United States, it's almost two things. It's the United States before the Civil War and the United States after the Civil War. And that's how important the Civil War was to what was going to happen moving forward in this country. But then even within the Civil War, you have before the Battle of Gettysburg and after the Battle of Gettysburg. That's how significant Gettysburg was to the Civil War. So, and you have, and again, it's numbers, right? It's 100 and it's like, I hope I get this right. It was 157 or so thousand soldiers from both sides combined, coming into a town of 2,400 people.
I know.
They're clashing, right? You have at least 51,000 casualties. They say really it's more like 60. And you have 7,000 die right away. You have a ton more injured, but a lot of those died of their wounds.
Yes.
Plus there were 10,000 missing in action. So what they say is, I mean, there were shirkers. I mean, it was a horrible, I'm sure some of them ran.
But there was a lot of explosions. You could see the monument where everybody was.
Exactly. And if you're charging a cannon and it goes off, there's going to be nothing left of you.
Exactly.
So
and that's the part that hits home.
It's sad. And when you're there, tell me, when you were there, did you feel like, because I was told this before I went, I was like, okay, you're going to go there, you're going to be walking around, and then
Mhm.
it's going to hit you at some point. At
Mhm.
some place on the battlefield, it's going to hit you. It could be Pickett's Charge, it could be Little Round Top, it could be
Mhm.
Devil's Den, but it's going to hit you, and you're going to feel this overwhelming sense of sadness and despair.
You know
And
what? Yes.
okay,
And for me, it was the it's so hard because you're looking at a town, okay, where literally they fought throughout the whole town. Like you said, anywhere you go, they were laying in the streets. They were fighting in the street. You look at Jenny Wade, which was said to be the only woman who died in the war, and she was cooking in her kitchen, stood up, and a bullet went through her door and hit her and killed her.
Yeah.
Like that's how much everything was going on. But for me, it was a devil's den, and I know that there's a lot of indigenous stuff around some of that as well. You know, like they talk about folklore of a giant snake. They talk about, you know, a very sacred ground, but there were still problems with that ground long before, you know, the War of 1812, because there's some speculation, like was there something about this specific area that caused some of this? I mean, you're going off track a little bit as per the war, but you just don't know, right? The
right,
indigenous men, they knew about certain places. They knew which places to avoid. There's a reason it was named the Devil's Den. It was that before the war, apparently. So that to me was, for many reasons, very drawn to it as well.
right. And you hear about that, and then you try to, and here's what's interesting about it. So you go there, and now you're trying to. What I wanted to do was document, and that was the most important thing to me. I was trying to do some good work there, and then with the book, it was, you know, the first chapter of the book is about explaining paranormal activity, what it is, what's a ghost, what is a ghost, and trying to
Mhm.
explain the different theories, and just to set the tone for the book. And because there's different kinds of hauntings, there's residual, right? Sometimes people are at Gettysburg, they're there and they hear cannon fire, or they hear
Mhm.
gunshots, or they hear a man screaming.
Mhm.
Well, this is most likely a residual haunting, a playback, right?
Mhm.
The emotions get recorded into the environment,
It's an
right?
imprint in
And
time.
then it's played back, and you happen to be there if you're psychically inclined, or if you're in the
Mhm.
right place at the right time. You'll hear, smell. I mean, how many cigar smoke,
Mhm.
gunpowder?
I like the
Uh,
one with the peppermint because of the smell of death that women used to walk around with peppermint and vanilla in their hankies just
yeah,
Yeah.
to block out some of the smell, because there's a lot of reports of that
it's
through
amazing,
through the streets, and that's something totally. How does that leave an imprint?
right? Right,
Well,
and
it
then you
could,
have to ask yourself too. Then if it could be residual, or
yeah, well, for
is
sure.
it genuine?
Yeah.
Spirits, which I think it's all of the above, but
Mhm.
there's actual spirits there. Like some people say, like in the more than one person, way more than one, they see this phantom regiment. Like they'll see almost a playback of, an entire regiment marching.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is more likely residual because it's an entire regiment. But when people, they'll
Yeah.
see a soldier, or the soldier will come up to them and start talking to them. So that's obviously a genuine
Mhm.
haunting where there's communication, attempt at communication,
Mhm.
where the spirit is like there, and whatever they're doing, and someone or someone or more than one person is picking up on that.
Mhm.
So, and that's, Amelia mentioned, like, okay, wow, I always heard about Gettysburg, and it's like, yeah, and when you go for the first time, and first of all, just historically alone,
Mhm.
it's an
Mhm.
amazing place.
Mhm.
Not only
Yeah.
should every American go, but I think there are a lot of foreigners every year that come to see Gettysburg.
Mhm. Well,
It's
Mhm.
it
an
was
iconic
pivotal
place.
for the United States, wasn't it? Like, that's what turned everything
Everything.
at that point, turned it all around.
Yeah, if the Confederates had won that battle and Lee had won that battle,
Mhm.
they probably would have
Things would be
seceded,
different.
and
Yeah.
the North would have given up on trying to keep them in the Union, and we
Yeah.
would have had two countries.
Yeah.
Different. Yeah, a different outcome for sure. A lot of people say they hear the cannons.
Mhm.
That's something I hear common. it's common, whether you're gifted or not. They hear the cannons and they're shocked by it because some of them aren't mediums and they don't expect that.
But I think that's the point. I mean, let's think about it
Yeah.
for a minute, guys. What kind of a ripple effect would that leave in time and space with all that war, all that
A
energy?
lot of it.
That's a ripple effect, even dimensionally. You talk about a lot of replays and a lot of like phantom sounds and things like that that are just residual. It's like people report phantom sounds all the time, but it's just a matter of think about the intensity of what happened there on an energy level. It would be incredible.
I'm hearing the call outs, and I'm not even there. I think remotely I need to bring myself back because I'm like kind of ending up there, but I'm hearing them call for fire. It's so heavy though. It's really so heavy for me, especially. It's dark and it feels so cold. I feel like that's a place that I need to go to
It's an incredible place.
to help and just see if I can help people cross.
And be ready, prepare yourself.
Yeah. Well, you should have seen me prepare for the 9/11 memorial, and I still wasn't prepared. And I worked myself up for that. Nothing.
I've seen psychics leave Gettysburg. Like I can't stay here.
I think I would probably. I don't know, because I deal with crime. I believe that I would handle it a little bit differently. I'm used to seeing certain images.
I think it's this energy. I've worked around dark things and crazy things all my life. I didn't have that. I didn't have an issue being there, but it was the intensity of the energy and then that imprint. And there's really not too many places you could walk where there wasn't somebody. I mean, heck, I was with, a group of people the one night and they moved somebody on. There was just this young soldier just following our group around. And we were probably about 6 or 7 just in our group alone.
That's why
everybody was intuitive. And they're just like, oh, there's this young soldier following us around. So we just stopped and moved him on. That was it.
That's what I would want to do.
Gone.
Yeah. Just
you couldn't move them all on. Like not.
No, but I mean the ones that reach out to you at least, being having this ability, you can help rather than leaving it there.
So for your book, you've interviewed researchers as well, right? Paranormal investigators and
I did. Yeah, I wanted to combine. So, talk to parapsychologists, people in different disciplines, and just have them talk a little bit about, what have you learned from your research? What are we dealing with here? And because again, I wanted people to be grounded in that, because when we were there, for me, it's about documentation. And so, I wanted to, find patterns, and see if there were patterns in the stories that people were telling and corroborate evidence. So if you have EVP and you get photographs, well, yeah, that's phenomenal. And, we always had, there were enough people on the trip. Say we had between 10 and 15 people and they all had cameras, and, I encouraged take photos constantly. And I got photos on my film camera of, you were talking about our nurses and the peppermint and the mint, whatever. And we got a picture of a woman in a dress with a duffel bag, and it was behind Devil's Den in a wooded area.
That's a crazy area.
And I looked it up, and there were the nurses at night when the fighting stopped, they would go out into the field and give men whatever they needed to give them to try to. They couldn't do much, but they would, give them morphine or whatever they had back then, to ease the pain. So, and they'd have a little duffel bag, it would be like a doctor's duffel bag, but they would go out there and they would do their thing, because you'd hear men screaming all over and moaning, and you would just find them and with candlelight.
Yes.
Can you imagine, and then the dead bodies and the dead horses. And that's
Just
what people
carnage.
don't get, the smell and I mean,
Mhm.
it's just,
I
It was
think
complete
about it.
complete carnage. I think I actually found, a photo. One second here.
I think about
I'll
how many men laid there. Sorry, while you're looking for that, how many men laid there and maybe ended up dying because when they were nudged, they couldn't respond.
okay, this is a just, beware picture, just, there. It's an oldie,
yep,
but
Yeah.
this is pretty much, this is one area,
yep,
right? I mean, it just gives you look at that and you just realize, put that like a hundredfold.
right.
You're in a field here, but, look at
Because
that like a hundredfold.
a hundredfold, and those were areas that the photographers were able to actually get to, but they never got like at the after Pickett's charge. You had
No.
bodies piled 3, 4 high on top of each other, and
Mhm.
imagine if they would have been able to take photos there.
Mhm.
We got, as Library of Congress, we got permission. We put a lot of those photos in the book because we wanted to show
Mhm.
just how bad it was. And when you can think about it, and obviously anyone who's been in battle and been in combat in the military, they understand that. But those are the only people that can understand that. So
Mhm.
I couldn't understand
Absolutely.
that,
No.
and so I'm going there. I'm trying to do my thing the best I can, but it was always with the greatest amount of respect for the soldiers who died there.
Mhm.
And that's the key when you go there. Have that respect and understand if you're trying to communicate in any way, have that respect.
Mhm.
Say thank you for your service, thank you for your ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah. What
And
can
we
I do
really,
for
no
you?
matter, regardless of the side, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Yep.
Most
How
of the
can I
men,
help
most
you?
of the young boys who died, they weren't political.
No.
They were just fighting.
They were
They're fighting for their
children. They were
state.
children. At that, if they were in this day and age, they wouldn't even be allowed to vote. That's how young they were going in.
Correct. And a lot of them lied about their age because there's this whole romantic notion, especially back then,
Yes. Yeah.
and they realized what really happened with the Civil War is that you had newer technology in the weapons, but they were still using Napoleonic tactics.
Mhm.
So they're lining up, they're marching, right? And
No,
that's what happened in
true.
Pickett's charge. You had 10,000 Confederate soldiers in Pickett's division
Mhm.
march a mile over open field
Mhm.
before they got to the Union line. And during that mile walk, they were bombarded,
Mhm.
right,
Oh, just over the
with
ridge.
artillery.
Oh, yeah.
And
Besides that.
it was just a just
Mhm.
shameless,
Mhm.
like just a ridiculous loss of life and
Mhm.
unnecessary
Yeah.
loss of life where you're just getting picked apart.
Mhm.
And when you do Pickett, you can act when you walk Pickett's charge. If you walk it as if you were Confederate soldier, you come out of the woods and then you go
Mhm.
that mile. You walk that mile.
It's wide open.
John, he's been on
Yeah.
the show a couple times
Yeah,
with
yeah,
me.
yeah.
I went with him once, and he literally broke down in the middle of like halfway there. He got to one knee and started crying.
Oh.
Yeah, because it was
The
that
heaviness.
overwhelming. And
Yeah.
then in
Can
the
be, yeah.
triangular field,
Mhm.
which is right by Devil's Den, I
Mhm.
was there, and all of a sudden I broke down because there was a
Mhm.
soldier there. I could feel it. He was missing his mother, and he was like, "I died here," and I'm da da da, and
Mhm.
like it's overwhelming.
Mhm. It is very overwhelming. You really have to prepare yourself, for that different flooding of emotions. And you also have to think too, like there were a lot of homesteads in those fields, and some of these houses still exist.
Hmm.
And people report crazy amounts of paranormal activity going on there.
It's amazing the farms that and they're still standing. The one
And they
thing about
belong they
Gettysburg
belong to the community now too, right? To the government essentially.
yeah, and they've done a phenomenal job of preserving the battlefield. And since I haven't been there in a couple of years, but I've heard they've even cut down some trees to make it look more like it looked in 1863.
Wow.
And they're not cutting down they're called witness trees. That there
Mhm.
there are trees there that actually were there during the battle.
Wow.
And they're, well over 150 years old, but those trees are marked as witness trees.
Wow.
But they do a phenomenal job. Is it like if you're looking from Little Round Top or you're looking down at, you can see the Valley of Death, you can see Devil's Den, you can see the Triangular Field, you can see the wheat field, and you could see Pickett's Charge. Like you literally in your mind, they make it very easy for you to imagine 10,000 Confederate soldiers coming out of those woods towards you, towards the Union line. And it's and here's the irony of it. I just think it makes it very surreal is that Gettysburg is a beautiful place.
It is.
Rolling hills, rural Pennsylvania, and on a fall or a spring day, it is absolutely beautiful there. Peaceful. Like when you're on the battlefield, it is one of the most
I've been both times. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. And then they have some of these farms that you were talking about. They are B&Bs, and we used to stay at one, and particularly that was on the battlefield when the battle happened.
Wow!
And there's a blood stain on the floor because that's where they were doing they were bringing the men in.
White House, same.
Correct.
Yeah, they leave it. But see, isn't it? It's almost surreal and eerie in a way. Like when you see that, it drives the point home, doesn't it?
It does.
Like I saw that at the Jenny Wade house. I was like, oh, God, like, geez, it really drives it home.
I had a moment at the Jenny Wade house too, because I think for me, it was hard because she was a civilian, and she was just baking.
Yes.
And it was a stray Confederate bullet. It was a sharpshooter.
Right through the door. It's
through the door.
Same door is still there.
With the hole in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, that's where you want to get someone who can read and put their hand on that.
It's just a lot
to
of
see if she even heard anything to be able to turn around, or I wonder.
A lot of mediums have been through there. A lot of investigators too. There's a lot of voice recordings. There's a lot of like he's believed to still be there, which is sort of sad, But I mean, her sister stayed and remained behind during the war to take care of Jenny, and Jenny stayed also to help cook for the soldiers,
right?
Right, that were camped outside, like in the streets. So here's it, like you say, a civilian doing their part, and it's the only woman who was said to have died in that whole bit of carnage.
Right.
That's not normal. Like usually they have a man. One of those soldiers, well, not really soldiers, but they're in the military just there to cook. Like,
well, she lived there. Her house.
No, I understand that.
House. Yeah,
I'm surprised she stayed, but it's so sad.
At some point, whoever was there could not leave.
No, I believe
so
that.
it was actually safer for them to stay in their homes. But for 3 days, they had to deal with all this. And there's a book that is all about the aftermath. So the armies leave. The Union Army, some of it obviously stays. They have these huge hospitals, a bunch of tents set up, right? Because you have to understand now, you have all these wounded soldiers. You have all these dead soldiers that they have to bury.
Pennsylvania Hall too, right?
And they have the horses, the dead horses. They got to clean all this up, and they got to do it. And they're trying to save lives still because men are still dying of their wounds. And here you have these 2,400 people at Gettysburg trying to help, and here's one of those things that's just horrible to think about. But you literally could smell Gettysburg 10 miles away,
Really?
where you can just the stench.
Summertime, July.
And so this is an indelible mark on the landscape, emotional, and so you go, and again, we're assuming that people believe in the paranormal here. So if you believe in paranormal experiences and the paranormal, then you know what's going on there. You just absolutely know what's happening, and Yeah, I had a couple experiences there that changed my life, and it happens to everyone there. And it's funny because the women go and they drag their boyfriends or husband. Usually is the way it works. So
Mhm.
we're on these
Well,
trips,
someone has
and,
to drive
Sure.
there, right?
and the
It's true.
guy's like, at beginning, oh, yeah,
But
I
it's
don't believe
war,
in
so
this,
they're
and
usually
really tough guy,
yeah,
and
but they'll do it because it's
inevitably,
war-based, right? So it's not
what's
like
that?
it's war-based. Oh, yeah, okay, it's just
Yeah. But
oh,
they don't believe in ghosts. So it's
no.
like, well, I don't believe in that nonsense. And inevitably something happens to them
Yeah.
Yes.
where they completely freak out by the end of the weekend. And you just know it's going to happen to them because they're begging for it. I mean, yeah. And it's like, really? I wouldn't act like that if I were you. It's not going to work out well for you.
No. No, it's true. But you know what? You notice always the skeptics that get some of the best experiences.
Yeah.
It's like they just seek them out and go, I'll show you.
It's not
I've
fair.
seen it happen so many times through the years, and I just sit there and go, right. And the woman just like should have left him back there a while to get the full experience. That's her husband. I'm like, wow.
Well, we would have people. It's not funny. Anyway, but it was a good experiment.
Yes.
But we go to like the Wee Field. We go to a place, wide open area. And it's usually Devil's Den, triangular fields. There's a lot of area there.
Mm-hmm.
We did the same in Little Round Top. We'd say, okay, everyone has their recorders. They have their phones. I used to encourage people to take a half hour, go somewhere and sit alone. Just sit alone and be quiet. Meditate if you want. See what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And we would let them do that. And we would kind of be overseeing, like we'd be walking around and checking on people.
Mm-hmm.
So many of them were just like, I just felt, or, whatever, or they heard something, or they felt this very strong kind of emotional sensation.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're quieting their minds,
Yes.
and they're in that, they're sitting in it.
But
And,
don't people, like in that situation, have you ever had any of your people, because there have been reports of soldiers approaching people who have been on their own asking for assistance.
yeah. And that never happened. And I agree with you because that's what
Yeah.
happens. You'll be walking or sitting. And then when it's really quiet and your mind's quieted down, all of a sudden and you think it's a reenactor. That's what's really interesting about Gettysburg, because a lot of times there are reenactors there because they camp out there, etc. But what a reenactor, and we actually camped. We were hanging out with them for a while in Spangler Springs because they were camped out there, and they love. But guess what? They have the most amazing stories because they spend nights out in the open there.
I was going to ask you, who had the best story in your opinion? The most
Great
incredible story.
This one reenactor, he was talking about, I can't remember what part of the battlefield it was on. And he was in his, I think it was Confederate uniform. And I'm trying to remember from years ago, but he was dressed in uniform. And these reenactors they do a great job. I mean, they do it right. It's authentic. They don't mess around, and with the clothing, it's wool, it's uncomfortable, it itches. They're not in it for the comfort. They do it the way they did it then.
Yeah.
So he's walking and he sees a man walking towards him, and he's dressed in, the opposite of what he was. So I think he was the guy walking toward was in Union, but he was tattered. I mean, he was in tatters, right? Filthy, like muddy from head to toe. He had that 1,000-mile stare in his face. He had a gun, but he was really drawn in. His eyes were drawn in, and he was exhausted. And he walks up, and the guy's like, the reenactor's like, "Whoa." He's like, dude, that's amazing. Cause he was really impressed by the way he looked, because he's like, that is the most authentic thing I've ever seen. That's incredible. And he looked at him. He just looked at him with these hollow eyes.
Yeah.
And just like looked at him and then turned back and then walked away. And then he's like, wait a minute, what in the world? And he turned around and there was no one there.
Very cool.
That's usually how things happen. And I love that. When I was there, they actually would not let anybody on the battlefield at night. Did they open that up for you guys in your tour?
Well, here's a couple good things about it. So first, because we're on the battlefield at night, because we're at the B&B.
Got it.
You're right. So we're at the
Yeah.
B&B and you can
Right.
walk around. Now, I wouldn't go into a popular area and then, start setting up a Ouija board. I mean, I would never do that anyway, but you have people that do
I
that,
don't
which
think
is
you
why
need
they
one,
close
though.
the park.
I don't
What's that?
think you need it.
Yeah, I don't think you need one over there. I think
No, you don't. But
all
people,
kinds of
people are
magic.
dumb about that.
Yeah.
But, because they want to do all these things. But the fact of the matter is you can drive on the roads on the battlefield at night, but you can't stop and do things. So you could be driving through to get from point A to point B or to get to your B&B, or whatever, but you can't be walking on the battlefield at night. So, but because we were at the B&B, it was great because we were on it, and then we had a lot of activity at the B&B. And I actually have a photo of we're all in the living room, and this woman took a picture of us hanging out in the living room with the couch, and we were just sitting talking about what happened that day. And through the window in the back, on the back porch, there are two soldiers looking in.
Oh, see, that's just crazy. Not surprising. A lot of these houses were used as hospitals.
Yes, they were field hospitals.
Yes.
Almost every one of them, and that's why they had the blood stains, because that's where they were,
So it doesn't surprise me at all that you had them so close to you like that.
Yeah, they were, they were sawing people's arms and legs off.
Oh, I know.
Well,
and they would throw them out the window, and they would pile up outside the window to above the window.
Can you imagine
so you had a 3 to 4 feet tall pile of arms and legs.
Yeah, which they would probably burn after, which is really sad.
Yeah, or bury.
Oh, that was the only thing they could do. Did you find with the reenactors, did they ever get where it's just too heavy for them to do this, and some have left, or
the thing about reenactors and the ones we ran into, they're so into the history of it, and they're the kinds of people that if they could, literally, they'd live in that time period.
Okay.
And we've all felt, we know how that goes, the draw to a different time, right? Past lives. And I honestly, I believe that's why some of them have these experiences, because honestly think they were in it. They could have been in the battle, and then 4 of their buddies from that time are still there, and they go back in uniform, and they're having all these experiences because their buddies are like, hey, it's Bob, he's back. Like, seriously, like there's so much going on there that you just don't know. But they love the history so much, and they love it that they have a different look. They have a different attitude about the ghost. There's like, it's part of it here. It's all okay. Because again, they respect the soldiers. They talk to they love talking to the soldiers. So if they think someone's around, they're going to use that vernacular because they know that vernacular. A lot of them know the military vernacular. So they're giving sergeant, and they're going to say it in ways that they said it back then. So they're going to get these responses, right? So it's like this really cool interaction. I thought about writing an entire book just on the reenactors.
Oh, I mean, the stories, they're there like all summer long, or a good chunk of the year. I'm going to let you talk for a minute. I'm going to do a show and tell. I have a piece from Gettysburg.
Ooh, I love show and tell.
Okay, 1 second. 1 second.
And I muted myself too, thinking, where is she?
Oh, we're still on. Okay, so okay.
Yeah, we can talk in the meantime. I think doing a book with the reenactors, I think that's a fantastic idea, Jack. It really gives a different perspective on things. And I know here is not like Gettysburg. We have the battlefield of 1812, like the War of 1812, and they have the reenactments every year on June 6th, I believe. And it is epic. These guys are the same ones every year, dressed in it. They do an incredible job, so much so that we often have to help clean up because of all the spirits that are awoken by that.
My son's got an 1812 musket, like the rifle and everything. That was a very, very rare find that I was able to pick up at auction, because a lot of them survived, and somebody died, they would just grab one off the battlefield, right? The next guy would take it, and sometimes they end up in families and they stay there. But this is a show and tell here. Hold on. It was an officer's sword from the north.
Wow.
And
Beautiful.
I picked this up for Wayne for Christmas one year, and obviously the sharp side is up, but it's got nicks in it. And this
Wow.
hung over a family's fireplace for a very, very, I mean, you know, it got passed down. He's got the write-up on it put away because, you know, like I don't have. I'll try to bring this up closer to show.
Look at that.
That's
One
amazing.
full blade.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying. I'm going to knock out my taxidermy owl.
Those swords are so long.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that.
See the wear on it.
You
And
can see all the marks.
yeah, we did not want to do anything to it at all. We just wanted to leave it as close to original as possible. So he's got all the information on it. He tucked it away not to lose it because the antique dealer that I purchased it from had the write-up from the family. It was from this person around this time. And of course, I just spurred the moment, look over. It's sitting there. I'm like, wait a minute. Why did I have this right?
It's on there.
Sometimes I'm a good thinker, but sometimes not so much. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
That was a nice chair.
Is pretty awesome.
But another piece that I have is that I purchased from an antique dealer in Pennsylvania, who picked them up at auction, was a headstone. Because if somebody was missing in action, because they were in this case, they were just blown. They were blown up, and his name was on part of like the big monument that you see there in the middle when you go in on the driving tour. But they would give a headstone to the family so they had something that they can go and look at, or you know, they said they had something that they were given by the military, and they would have the name on it, and every family got one. And back then, it all went on their properties. I mean, you would even bury people on their properties. Of course, I didn't know that when I purchased these things, you know, because you could barely see them. And I'm a weirdo. I buy oddities. So I brought back two different ones. One is not. One belongs to a woman. I actually had a friend of mine who's searching to see if this woman still has a family. But according to the guy from the auction, they had taken these properties. They were farm properties, and I'm guessing that they were just tearing the places down or putting in, you know, a survey or doing something, and everything got taken. And in this research, the one headstone ended up being a young man in Pennsylvania who fought for Pennsylvania, and was never found. So, you know, so this was just one item. So I've become a caretaker of these pieces. You know, because I'm like, find the family. And then I want to return them is what I'd like to do. But he says, like, because if I can't do anything with them, this dealer, he goes, then, you know, you can't keep everything. I'm just like, it broke my heart. I'm like, well, I'll babysit them for a while. So it's kind of what I'm doing. It's just waiting and seeing. And, you know, no one's ever claimed it.
I'll tell you after the show. I got some stuff when you were talking about it, but I'll tell you after.
All right. So anyway, back to the show, you know, I wanted to share this with everybody because it is just so unusual. You don't see many of these. I mean, they come up every now and then at auction and stuff, but not often, you know.
Did they all carry swords and muskets, or was it one or the other?
Those are
different brigades. Pardon?
Bayonets, officers.
Bayonets, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, bayonets, I think. Well, I don't even think they had anything like that back then, did they, Jack? Did they have bayonets? The
bayonets were for the soldiers, and they had their guns, and they put the bayonet on the top, you know, affixed it to the end of the gun.
Yeah, especially if
the officers had swords.
Yeah, because soldiers would be on the front line.
And
that's scary.
The officers would usually be on horseback and have a sword.
Yeah, this has got some
heads
chings in it, but maybe the family got to chopping wood. I don't know. You know, but
can you imagine how they wield those swords when they were on the horses?
Yes, I can. I love swords.
Yeah, they trained. They got good at that.
Oh, well, things like that. I mean, it's gruesome because I'm like saying, "Oh, they're chopping heads off," but yeah, it's gruesome.
No,
So
it's
it makes sense that the officers, yes, they would have to lean over. But
I don't
oh
I
my
don't think there's
gosh,
anything good about war, you know?
nobody.
It is brutal. It is brutal.
Absolutely. Is there other wars in history? Are there other wars in history where the battlegrounds had homes right there, like Gettysburg?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Okay.
there's battles throughout history. There were always farms, you know, depending on where they fought. Sometimes it was out far enough, you know, going way back. But even like World War I in France, you know, the Western Front. I mean, there were farms and houses all along the fronts.
No, I know that. I collect things from World War One and World War Two. But what about in the United States? Is there other battlegrounds?
Well, yeah. I mean, the Civil War battlefields, and then we have Revolutionary War battlefields, and like you said, 1812. But that's about it. You know, those are all the wars fought on U.S. soil. Not many.
No.
So the very rare, and the Revolutionary battles tended to be smaller. Not that they were any less significant, and people died on them, but you're talking about like, oh, you know, maybe a couple thousand soldiers fighting and 400 casualties, which is all horrible.
Yes.
You know, but then you have a battle like Antietam or
Yes.
Gettysburg or Shiloh, where it's just absolute an annihilation of human life.
Yeah.
No one had ever seen anything like it before. I think 30. I want to get this right. It was 30% of households were affected
Oh,
directly
devastating.
by the Civil War, by losing a member of the family. So if you had 600,000 casualties, and I want to say there were 8 million. I want to get these numbers right, but it's staggering when you think about it. It was, hold on, let me find this. Okay. You had the total American population in 1863 was only 31 million.
Wow.
And making the percentage of households affected by this one battle staggering. It was largest number of casualties in any battle of an already bloody war, a casualty rate of more than 32%.
Oh, that's
Wow.
big.
So there were during the Battle of Gettysburg, 32% casualty rate.
Wow.
That's 1 in 3 men were either wounded or killed.
That's horrific. And out of the ones wounded, how many passed soon after that as well?
Right.
From their
And they don't, and the
injuries.
numbers on that are foggy, but quite
Yes.
frankly, you know, you had a lot of you didn't necessarily they didn't have a good percentage rate of, you know, once they start amputating legs and arms,
No.
if you get shot in a certain area, even if they got the bullet out, they had this was before penicillin. This was before, you know, the doctors didn't
Infection.
wash their hands.
Yeah.
No.
Infection.
So they would take,
A lot
their
of
hands would be
infection.
completely bloody from one man.
Mhm.
They put another boy or, you know, young man on the table, and they go right at it.
Excuse me.
So
They had
everyone
no
was
choice.
getting infected.
They didn't
You
know
could
any
literally survive the battle, go home, be home for 2 weeks,
and pass
and
away
die from an infection.
and probably in withering pain
Horrible
as well.
pain.
Oh my gosh.
So, Jack, what were a lot of the common stories that you were hearing from either researchers or people coming forward? Like, did you get a lot of stories from residents or people in the town? Because I've had people talking constant about their stories. They're very open about it.
They are. And, you know, we did talk to people in town who live there, either live there or own businesses there, or both, both, because they're there.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're there and if you live there at night and you live in the town, I mean, the town is on the battlefield, basically. So if you're in town, you're on the battlefield, because the first day of the battle was in town.
Yes.
So that is all part of it. And so, you know, you talk to people, whether you're on Seminary Hill, Cemetery Hill, no matter where you are, Culp's Hill, you're hearing things, you're seeing things. right? You're definitely smelling things that shouldn't be there. And the businesses, you know, and a lot of the businesses, it's like, well, this building, because the building itself is historic.
Right.
Like the Farnsworth House is a B&B and
Yes.
a restaurant, right?
Yes.
There's literally cannonball holes in the brick on the side of the Farnsworth House. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, and
That's
you could
insane.
see it.
Yeah. That's insane.
You know,
know.
and like,
I
it's
know.
like, and the sharpshooter who killed Jenny Wade was in the attic of the Farnsworth House.
No.
Yeah, because the Confederates took over the town the first day.
Yes. Yeah.
But they didn't go far enough to get the high ground. So the Union had the high ground, but the Confederates had the town. So they had the sharpshooters in high, you know, third story, you know, in the Farnsworth House in the attic, and they had
higher the better. Yeah.
And so, but the fact that they didn't keep pushing to get the high ground was a big reason why they didn't win that battle, because it forced them to be aggressors. And the South was always really good about, no, we're not going to commit all these men to attack, and we're going to lose great numbers trying to breach the Union line. They never usually did that. We would do stupid stuff. The Union did stupid stuff like that.
Right.
They did that at Fredericksburg and they got annihilated.
Well, the Confederates are a little bit like guerrilla warfare, a little bit too, like a lot of the independents, right? Like they were good at hiding, and they could ambush you. Like they were good at
because you had certain people, like, and you had the sharpshooters, was really interesting back then, because you had most of the sharpshooters were the hunters, the people that would hunt squirrels, and they can shoot. I mean, literally, these were the sharpshooters.
Right.
So they would be the ones, and they'd have green, because they would try to, you know, blend in with the trees.
Yeah.
So they'd have bleached green shirts or jackets, and they'd go into trees, and they were sharp. They were really good sharpshooters. Both sides had that.
Yeah.
Back then, even unless you were in a New York City or something, for the most part, it was rural, and you had to hunt, and people knew how to shoot. So, but it was, you can only imagine the chaos. You can only imagine. And we would hear, like, one of the things that happened to us that was really, we had to sit back and be like, what just happened to us? We were in Little Round Top. And Little Round Top, if people don't know this, I would recommend everyone watch the movie Gettysburg.
Excellent.
It's a phenomenal film.
Yeah.
And I tell people, watch Gettysburg, then go to Gettysburg.
They did a good job.
Okay, I need to
watch a phenomenal job,
because I don't know that much about it.
That would be the number one recommendation. It's a fantastic movie. You can watch it in 2 parts. It's about 3 hours, 45 minutes. It's a long movie, but it's worth it. And so you get a feel for it. And then you go, I tell people, watch Gettysburg, then buy the book, and then take the book to Gettysburg with you, and go to all these different spots. And so Little Round Top is one of those moments in the battle. I guess if you want to even get more micro, if you have the Battle of Gettysburg before and after, then you have Little Round Top, and that's that moment in the battle where everything, if the Union line gives in and caves in, the Confederates overrun them and win the battle. So you have Joshua Chamberlain and his main regiment up there. They're the very, very far left of the Union line. There's nothing to the left of them, and they have to defend all these Texans coming up from the Triangular Field and Devil's Den, now up Little Round Top. They were going to try to get around them. So this very, very emotional, imprinted place. And we were there, and we were doing some experiments. So we started where Chamberlain's line would have been. Okay. And then we said we were about 20 feet apart each, with cameras, tape recorders. And we're just going to walk because what happened is Chamberlain, they fixed bayonets because they couldn't take another attack. So they decided to charge. Chamberlain said, fix bayonets. We're going to charge them and surprise them. And they were able to succeed in doing that. It was one of the most incredible moments in American history. So we said, let's pretend, but let's be Chamberlain's line walking down the hill as if we're charging. So we start doing this, and the next thing we know, we start hearing footsteps in the grass and the leaves, mostly leaves, that are next to us on this hill.
Mhm.
We would stop, they would stop, and then we'd start walking very gingerly again, and you'd hear like it was
The shuffling,
footsteps
the
running
crunch.
down the hill.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
And
I
we're
hear
like,
you gunshot.
and again, I'm like, what in the world is going on? So you speculate, well, is it the soldiers that they kind of still think, they might think, oh, we're charging because they're still kind of in that mode.
Yes.
And they're there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. They haven't left yet. And they're like, go, we're charging, like, go,
Mhm.
or, maybe residual, but it was almost like it was responding to us moving.
No, but you know what? I think that whole idea, there are, I'd say, a handful of researchers that I know who believe in reenacting as they research. They dress up in the garb, they go
Really?
in as researchers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they
fit
blend
right
in with
in.
the environment, they're in uniform, and they have had unbelievable experiences.
Yep.
So because they're going through those moments, and like you're one of them for that half hour or whatever it is you're doing, and that's what you guys are doing. You're one of them. You're blending, and you're interacting, and they're still there. Those who are still thinking perhaps that they're in battle are going to react to what you're doing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Not even totally residual, but there are people there who haven't moved on because they still think they're fighting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And that's exactly what we felt like was happening. And we're all three of us. There was like 3 or 4 of us in a row. And one guy is a PhD, and he's a very objective thinker. And he couldn't figure it. He was like, I can't believe what just happened, because he couldn't figure it out. He couldn't explain it away,
Yeah,
and because we were all hearing it.
That's the best thing to happen when you're with someone like
Oh, I love it,
You know,
right?
it just
Where it's like,
validates
I
everything
just
for us.
can't explain that, right?
No, I love it. I want to hear it over and over from anyone who's got
Yeah.
science on their side. Yeah.
We had one. Here's a good story. You guys will love this story, and it's a chapter I've made. It's a whole chapter in the book of what happened. So on the second day of battle, just to set the scene here, you have where Robert E. Lee says, we're going to attack the left side of the Union line, and again, they were going to try to break it. Okay, so he has his, wave after wave. They come up, they go through the wheat field, they're coming up, they come through the triangular field, and then they came up through Devil's Den, and then they went up to Little Round Top, but they never took Little Round Top. This was the second day of fighting. So it was basically Union defending the left flank. Okay, their left flank. So the triangular field is a really interesting place, and I'll tell anyone who's going to go to Gettysburg. I mean, you got to go to all the places.
Yes.
But if you want to do some experimenting, do it at triangular fields. It's just a very active environment. Patrick actually has footage, infrared footage, or night vision footage of a soldier running and then jumping over where the stone wall was back then.
Yeah.
And you see him jump over it. This is on videotape.
That is cool.
Right. And then we had one of the women with us. I remember she took photographs. You can literally see 3 Union soldiers in the bottom of the field at the low end of the field sitting there talking.
Insane. Have you seen the footage where somebody captured, I think probably a couple of years ago, and it's where the cannon displays are? They had these large cannons, and all of a sudden, this is a night vision, and a soldier comes out, and you can't see him full body. I don't even think you can see. I think you can see the waist up, and he walks around with this cannon, and people are just like, "Oh, what the heck?" Like, they're like, "Oh my god!" And this guy is doing something around the cannon.
There's a lot of those clips on YouTube.
And there really are. They're not. Listen, someone can do Photoshop or CGI. They can mess with things these days, but
yes.
but I know for a fact a lot of this footage is real because we took it. I mean, I know that it's real.
You know your
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So this is what happened on Triangular Field. So we're like, okay, well, we can't be on the battlefield at night. What if we take a camera, hide it under rock and moss, have it on the top part of the field where the fence is, looking down onto the field. And this would have been where the Confederates are coming up towards it. And we'll leave it overnight.
So you
and we're like, okay, yeah, you know what? My friend Scott brought the perfect little camera for that. So we set it up, and then we went back to the B&B. And the next morning, but we wanted to get there early, like at first daylight, because just in case the park rangers not that they would have found it, but we wanted to get it.
Yeah.
So before it got crowded or whatever. So we go back. It's like 6 a.m, 6:30. It's foggy. You can imagine this.
Oh, yes.
We drive. So the guy I was with drove up. I got out of the car. He goes, all right, I'm going to get the camera. I'll come right back. I go. I find the camera. I get it. I pack it up. I start walking back to the car. And all of a sudden I hear yelling. And I turn back around to look at the triangular field. And I'm hearing men yelling. And I'm hearing like yips and yaps and kind of like it almost sounded like Cherokee Indians, but it wasn't. So I'll get to what it was, but it was men. And then I'm thinking, so now I'm trying to find out what it is and what it's not. So I'm like, let me stand here and make sure it isn't cows. I don't know what cows sound like. I know they moo, but I'm like, I better make sure it's not some kind of animal.
Right.
Because there was no one on the battlefield yet. And this yelling is getting closer and closer to me, but I don't see anything. And then I go into this state, they call it the Oz factor, where when something paranormal happens and occurs, where you everything else stops for you. And you're just kind of in this moment with it. And you're hearing these sounds. And I'm in this with the sound. And then boom, it broke. I was like, okay. And I'm like, oh my God. And intuitively, and because I've done so much research, the first thing that came to mind, that was rebel yells. The famous rebel yells.
Okay. Yeah.
Men yipping and yapping and screaming. Right. And the Confederates did this.
Right.
So I walk back to the car and I say to the guy I'm with, I'm like, well, you're not going to believe this, but I honestly swear to God, I just heard the rebel yell. He's like, what? And I'm like, I just heard it.
It's still early enough. And you know what? Not a lot of people energy, I find, I mean, we don't mean to, but we have a lot of baggage too and stuff. And we absorb a lot of that energy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and I think we drain them. Or they can, maybe they're empowered by our energy to move around a bit easier. But I think you were there at that right time.
Yep.
So it was still easy. It was still foggy, a little bit cool,
early.
The mist, yeah.
And I wrote an entire chapter in the book on it because it was so, and I did it like thought by thought, right? Because I wanted to really just document the entire experience. Like what was going on in my head versus what I was hearing. And so then what I did was I went back, I did some research, and of course it was mostly Texans coming up through there. And they were they would do the rebel yell. They were known for that. I think it was Texas and maybe Louisiana. And so there was the rebel yell. And then I watched a 50-year reunion of Gettysburg, where these, the old geezers, right, these veterans who were very old at this point, all got together. And then some of the Confederate guys, right, the veterans, started doing the rebel yell.
Wow.
And it's exactly what I heard.
Oh, wow. What a validation.
And I was like, thank you, God. Like, it was just one of the most incredible moments.
Did you think to like record it? Were you able to?
No, I wasn't, because I wasn't.
It's always that way, isn't it?
I know, because I had the camera. I just picked up the camera.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if the camera still would have been on, it would have recorded it. But I was walking with a
It
camera in
didn't
my
get
hand
anything
back to the
before
car.
that, eh? Like, what did you get anything that night? On your camera?
On the camera, no.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's all.
We didn't on that particular time. We didn't get anything on the
Yeah,
camera.
it's
It
always
almost got to the point where if 2 hours went by and we didn't get anything really cool, it was disappointment.
right.
Because
Well,
that's how active it is.
because things happen so quick there.
You get so spoiled.
You do. Like you had
Mhm.
mentioned, store owners and stuff. When one of the times that I was there and this was in the middle of the day, packed with people, everybody was in town that day. And this wasn't the convention time. So this would have been the second time I went in the fall. And somebody came out, like we were in one corner in one store, and on the other corner, it was a store, but it had they served, like, it had a little food bar, like ice cream, different things like that. And a soldier was in the store, a spirit soldier, and people like, what? Like,
What ice
there were
cream?
multiple witnesses, and they came out and said, "Oh my God." So I'm standing there, and somebody says, "Oh my God, there's a soldier, a ghost in the store," and all of us saw it. I'm like,
That's cool.
Oh
it
my.
was there long enough for enough people to catch a glimpse of him, and then he just
See,
gone.
you wouldn't have a camera on there. But I think it's what I love the most about Gettysburg, and I haven't been there and I don't know all the history of it, but people who've experienced it, whether you're gifted or not, everybody has an experience. And I think that just speaks volumes, and it's important. And I feel that we're in a society where we're trying to erase it when we need to continue learning from it. So it's really nice. I love that everyone that goes there has a story to tell.
Mhm.
It keeps their memory alive, and it keeps you keep thanking them for what they did and what they gave by keeping them in our thoughts and our minds and our conversations and these experiences, and honoring them and going to visit them.
Mm.
Yeah, it's important.
It's
You
very
can never
important.
forget.
No, and I think it's important for them to know as well, if you're visiting there, is thank them.
Right. No, I agree. And we always, again, that's why we do it with the utmost respect. Everyone we're with
Oh, I know.
is uber respectful, and it's all about the soldiers and their sacrifice. And we're trying to help. We're trying to find out more. What was it really like?
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're more apt to talk to veterans, other veterans, or, it depends. It just depends.
Yeah, because you're fighting your own people. This isn't another country. These are.
Yeah, and you had, like you said, like a 16-year-old boy. Most of these boys who they're injured on the battlefield and dying or not were calling out for their mothers.
I know.
That is
That's
the most.
heart-
That
that's
is just the most
heart-wrenching.
As a
heartbreaking
mother,
thing.
that was just
Heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
much for me. Have you been able to check out other battlefields like Fredericksburg?
Yeah, Kathy. So we after doing Gettysburg for so long, I've been at Fredericksburg a couple of times, but I never was able to do a really solid investigation. So Fredericksburg's a very cool place. It's not as there's some development around it, so it's not as authentic. It's not as preserved and pristine as Gettysburg is. One place that is Antietam, and Antietam, we did an investigation there.
Mm-hmm.
And Antietam was another one of those. That was the bloodiest single day of the war, with like 20,000 casualties. So that had that distinction. And so while we were there, Michelle, you mentioned earlier the idea of immersing yourself as if you were one of the soldiers. We had a reenactor come and actually got permission for him to fire off a couple of blanks with his gun and his musket or whatever. And we did, it was nighttime, middle of the night, because on Antietam you can go on the field at night.
Wow.
So I'll meet you there. What day?
What's that?
I'll meet you there. What day?
Yeah, exactly. Like
yeah.
That's what's cool about Antietam. And so this guy does his thing. He's saying things like he would have said. He's shooting. all of a sudden, again, we hear these footsteps in the grass, like this whole bunch of like people running at us.
Wow.
And it scared the heck out of us.
Oh,
I
for
mean, it
sure.
really did, because like, you're like, what are they going to do?
Because that's intelligent, right? Because they are reacting to that reenactor.
Right.
Mhm.
It worked.
That's intelligent. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, totally
Right.
intelligence.
That's not
It's
residual.
consciousness
Yes.
surviving death, right? So
Yes.
it's there, right? And they
Crazy.
might be a little confused, but
Mhm.
it's still
Well,
consciousness surviving death.
It's trauma.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and if we would have spent more time in Antietam, I want to do Shiloh. That's another battlefield.
What about
Have
Pearl
not been to
Harbor?
Cold Harbor. Sometimes some of these places, and I'm not sure about Cold Harbor, but some places that are in more densely populated areas, or areas that have grown, depending where it is, sometimes they did, like Bull Run is all development. Like you're on a golf course. I mean, it's Bull
Jack,
Run.
what
We need to
about
be
Pearl
talking
Harbor?
to people there just to see if they're experiencing.
But see, if I went through and interviewed all those people who lived on the Bull Run battlefield, and they would, I guarantee that I wanted to do this for World War One in France. I wanted to go to all these little towns, and if the farms were still there, and talk to descendants, and talk to relatives, and talk to the people that live there now, to say, anything going on here at night? Because I guarantee you they're hearing stuff and they're seeing this. It's the same thing as at Gettysburg.
Would you go to Pearl Harbor?
The problem with not that there's a problem. I would love to go there and pay my
A lot of
respects.
ghost stories there. I did a show on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can get it, like the issue there would be logistics.
Yes.
I would think more than anything else.
Yeah, it's a long. Yeah, it's a
Plus
long way.
they sank. The boats it's in Arizona. So where are you doing the investigation?
You can go right over it.
And the whole town, the whole area around there, like through some of the outbuildings, and it's not just right in that spot. There are reports of a lot of reports of paranormal activity. It just spider webs out because some people scattered. Besides that,
there's 2,400 people there at the time.
There's so much. Oh yeah, I did a show on it. There's all kinds of paranormal activity there. You could probably stay at one of the towns, or in the town, or further outskirt. From ground zero sort of thing.
Yeah.
Probably within about a mile, maybe more, and still get activity.
And you got to remember you're at water. So that is conductive. And you're going to get EVPs standing above that ship.
Well, anywhere. Yeah. Anywhere within striking distance, but I agree with you. Gettysburg is definitely a pivotal point, and because it's well preserved, because it's encouraged, because the people still talk about it, and we're going to come back to it, but we do have to do station ID because we forgot been naughty with that over the last few days.
It's not me. I'm not directing.
I know. I'll own it. I'll own it.
Soldiers wasn't me.
I know.
Sometimes we can't break. It all depends. But today you are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano, coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 107.7 FM radio, as well as on the Gulf Coast on 105.3 FM radio. We're live on Roku TV, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook group pages, all of them. Listen to us on Alexa Prime, and you can stream us on approximately, if not more, 250 streaming platforms. Our returning guest tonight has become like our third co-host and one of our favorite guests, Jack Roth, who is an incredible author. And tonight we're talking about his book, Ghost Soldiers of Gettysburg. If you don't have it, you've got to get it. This is just amazing. The stories and that he's captured in his book, and the interviews and the photos. You're just going to love it. If that's your thing with Gettysburg, if you're into the paranormal, you can't go without this book. First, we're going to start off with our gratitude, of course, for Folgers Coffee from our first episode with UPRN Radio, Joe Montaldo being our producer and network owner. We thank you both for your continued support and sponsoring our show. Our fabulous banner and promo media is courtesy of Steve McGinnis. He is a horror illustrator. He's an amazing artist, but he also creates custom commission pieces. You can find him on Facebook. I gotta take a deep breath. I'm talking too fast. Our intro is courtesy of Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, also known as Justin Snicker, award-winning composer, vocalist, and musician. You can find his music on Amazon and Bandcamp. Stream on any platform and find Dr. Snick on Facebook and Instagram. He's always posting, especially this month, Spooktober. You're going to see a lot of and listen to a lot of his clips on there, which is perfect time to get his albums. Lastly, this is the scolding part. If you are watching this episode right now, please give us a like, smash that subscribe button. And if you don't want to miss an episode, hit the notifications. Kindly share us with your friends and family. You're helping us so much to grow on social media. And this way we can continue bringing the best in their fields just for you.
And don't forget Rumble, people. It's doing well. It's doing really well. So
Rumble at the beginning. Is that a Canadian company?
You betcha.
Ooh,
I know.
That.
No censoring. Just saying. No.
Oh,
I know.
I like it. I like it.
It's pretty bad. I'm thinking we're going to have to open up a Patreon account just so we could talk about the things that we're not allowed to talk about.
Yeah.
Get me going. Go ahead, Jack.
Oh, I didn't know if we were on yet.
We're on. I was just having a moment.
And I want to do a shout out. And this is the type of thing. And Amelia, I know you'll appreciate this because we want to honor the people. We want to honor the people, right? And the people that not only had to deal with during the battle, but after the battle. So, okay. So in the aftermath, you have all these, you have to bury thousands of men scattered around all over, right? So, and then the state of Pennsylvania was already started to construct the Gettysburg National Cemetery, and they were going to hold the Union dead there. There was a man, and I want to mention his name. He was I guess he was a teamster, and his name was Samuel Weaver. And he was hired as superintendent for the exhuming of bodies from the battlefield. And he combed through the battlefield, identifying Union and Confederate burials, and carefully disinterred Union soldiers for removal to the new cemetery. He delivered up to 100 bodies per day. And he kept careful notes on each burial he located in order to determine identity, allegiance, and preserve personal effects for the families.
Wow.
That's actually,
we talk about the battle, right? And of course we honor the soldiers. But you know, after the battle was literally a disaster at Gettysburg. I mean, you can only imagine.
Thank you, Samuel Weaver.
So this is just one man who you hear about and who did this amazing thing. I mean, you know, imagine all the parents. Where's my son?
Oh, people don't realize that a lot of these bodies actually got dug up again and sent home even, right? They just couldn't leave them out in the heat in the summer, just all that carnage. They had to do something with it, like 100 bodies a day. I can't even imagine the kind of work.
It was the summer. It was hot.
And you didn't have a backhoe, you know what I mean? This was by hand. This was
there was no like excavation and big, you know, equipment and all this mechanical.
Someone had to do it, right? And they picked the right man because he sent a lot of people home to their families.
You know, oh, sorry, Amelia, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I mean, I was just going to say, even the Titanic, they're still in Nova Scotia. They're still there, buried. They never sent them back to England or wherever they were.
Beautiful memorial there for them.
Yeah.
And that they did a good job in Nova Scotia with that, to honor them. You at least want to be buried. Like they had, I remember I was in Richmond recently and they have the Hollywood Cemetery. If you ever go to Richmond, you have to go to Hollywood Cemetery. Jeb Stuart's buried there. George Pickett's buried there.
There's
been 4 presidents buried there. It's like, it's incredible. And it's on this hill. And it's amazing. It's one of the coolest cemeteries and beautiful cemeteries I've been to. But they had all these they had Confederate soldiers who died at Gettysburg. And then years later, they got their bodies and then interred them in Richmond Cemetery. So, and a lot of them was like unknown, but at least they got the bodies back. And a lot of them, they were able to say, oh, he's from Richmond, but they wanted to put him in a proper cemetery because there's still a lot of mass graves in Gettysburg. And they don't want to disturb that, they don't want people like
sometimes it's body parts too. So what do you do with that? Like you just that is a mass grave. You just can't.
But eventually bones disintegrate, right?
Yeah, but and then you have belt buckles.
Buttons. Yes.
The artifacts.
So you're gonna have, and then you're like, oh, and then you can find, So, but at a certain point, you're right. At a certain point, it's like leave them rest.
You have to. It's the respectful thing to do, especially for all their great loss. That's the least we can do.
I had a story that I'd come across because, Joe and I have done shows on the graves and we've covered a lot of different stuff. And a story that stuck out with me was about a dog actually that belonged to Brigadier General Barksdale. And and when he passed, his wife went to basically have her husband's body exhumed, and she brought his favorite hunting dog. And the dog literally fell down under the ground and began to howl. And no matter what she did, she could not get the dog she couldn't pull him away. In fact, it got so bad, he watched over the grave literally all night. And the next day, they were able to load him into a wagon, head back to Mississippi. And the dog would not, he just would not leave. So she ended up having to go home. So now, of course, the townspeople were trying to take care of this grieving dog. And literally people still hear this dog's howling on the spot where essentially he was buried. Even though he had been taken away and taken back to Mississippi, the dog just focused on that energy. So it makes you wonder, is the guy still
we don't deserve dogs.
No, you know what I mean? Just so loyal and so distraught.
That's incredible.
Right? Yeah.
You often see soldiers that are buried and then there are dogs that are with them now in present time fighting. And when they're buried, their dogs go to their funerals and they can't leave the casket. They can't leave the body.
No, it's tough.
It's heart-wrenching to watch.
Yeah, I had to mention that because it's this one paranormal story that people connect with. They still hear this dog just howling away.
There.
Maybe he's with General
Hope neither one of them are stuck. Yeah. That is so sad.
It's one of those things that we don't think about. When we're talking about the after effects of everything that happened.
And this is a family dog.
It was one of his favorite hunting dogs. Yeah. I mean, Brigadier General, I imagine, he came from a higher up, wealthier family in Mississippi. So he was brought back to Mississippi, dug up again, so.
I got goosebumps.
Okay, Wayne.
I just saw that.
Time to pee on my bed. That's real.
Nice.
Only Wayne.
What happened? Dang, I
Wayne's
know.
ruining us on Halloween. Just putting it out there. You'll hear more stories about the cat.
Oh my gosh. So,
okay. Can I just say something really quick and lighthearted? Did you have a Gettysburg burger?
Gettysburg burger, no.
I can't believe you. I had the burgers. A
Gettysburg, just a burger in Gettysburg.
No, Gettysburger.
There's
Gettysburg. It's called Gettysburgers.
Right. No, it's true. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't.
You got to go back.
It's this little joint. You look for it the next time you go. It's
I
phenomenal.
want to go. It's been a long time,
It's even on the show.
and I miss it. I
for
miss it because of the beauty and the serenity.
Well, you're gonna love the burger.
Yeah, it's hard to find. It's not known as like a really great restaurant place. I mean, there's some restaurants there, but I never heard of that place. I got to try it out.
Well, no, it's exceptional.
I think Gettysburg.
The first time I went, we stayed in a regular, like I said, new hotel. The second time we stayed in a very old historic home in Gettysburg, just to try to, on the flip side, just getting a whole different feel for it. And we stayed off the beaten path. Like, we didn't go right into the town. So we just stayed out this time. And, the energy was not that much different. We were only 10 minutes out of town.
Right.
And the energy was not that much different. Like, you could tell it had a really large scope of, not ground zero, but you just know it just really was far out, far reaching.
If you go, I wonder, and this is something that, we talk about doing research and going to haunted places. And I feel like when you go to a house, it's easily contained. You're in the house, or you have the grounds of the house, and you can really get a lot done. Like you could, if you wanted to, you go to one place, you're in the house or plantation, whatever it is. And you go to Gettysburg, you have the town, and then you have the surrounding the battlefield, and the battlefield was enormous because you had these different days where different things happen all over the place. And then, like you said, though, and this applies to everywhere. There's always a native presence. There's always a native history.
Yes.
And there's things that happen before the battle. Like we had a talk with someone about this. So there's a ghost here, and it's a woman. She walks through town. It's not from Gettysburg. It happened before Gettysburg. I'm like, oh, what do you mean? Like, she died in 1830 or 1840 something, and she walks around. It's supposedly what's this girl, and she drowned or something. I don't know, but so you have that, and then you also have, like you say, even after the battle, you have other things happen. There, for example, and you might know about this place. It's an old building during, or at least right after. Okay. Right after the battle, it was an orphanage, and what wound up, and people didn't realize this, you had a lot of orphans, and because so many kids lost their parents in the battle, so they opened up this orphanage there, and plus you also had the College of Gettysburg.
Well, Pennsylvania Hall was where a makeshift hospital too. It's said to be the most haunted building.
Yeah,
there were only like 100 kids in that college to start with,
and that's a very haunted college. I mean, there's a lot that happens there. So, but they had this orphanage, and what wound up happening, the woman who was in charge abused the children, and she used to lock them up in the basement.
I remember that.
In chains. I think a couple of kids died there.
Yes.
So we actually did an investigation of this place.
Yes, I was in that house. Yes.
Yeah, and the psychics were picking up on these kids.
Yes. Terrible.
Had nothing to do with the actual battle.
No, but it was
it was after an aftermath of the battle, but like still.
It was the cause and effect.
Right.
And that was the aftermath of that carnage, and ended up being at times, which, I mean, it still happens, the stories in New Orleans about that.
So sad.
It's terrible. It's terrible. But I remember going to that place, and I was just like, oh my God, like it really, the energy is it's just a different type of energy, but it's the same heaviness that you feel going through so many different parts of that town and the battlefield. And they pretty up the driving tour. Like, you just, this is so nice, because you overlook the valley. And but I mean, people who are intuitive are just like, holy shit, there's a lot of stuff going on out there. And you're still sitting there,
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's so well done. With every state, has a monument that they've donated to this park. And you just realize as you go through it, you're like, oh my God, it's so vast, because it's homage from 50 states,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I wanted to quickly share. I pulled up the notes because I hate just saying, "Oh, there's an indigenous story." I like to, you know me, Jack. I like to back up everything I freaking say. So in the Devil's Den, which is supposed to be Gettysburg most haunted, it goes back to the areas around it. There's an outcropping of rocks. It was a Native American hunting ground for centuries. And some say that a huge battle, so here we are again. Is this tainted land or what? A huge battle was fought there called the Battle of the Crows, during which many perished. And for, again, centuries, people have said that there were many unnatural and supernatural sights and sounds there. And they were reported in the area of the Round Top and what we call the Indian Fields. So this goes back to stories going way back, and that the Indian war whoops could still be heard on certain nights. War whoops. Right? So I know. And he reported strange Indian ceremonies which took place there. The idea that an ancient tribe once lived near the site is believed that the scattering boulders once had been part of a tall pyramid. Wait for this. And stated that there were crevices in the rocks which bore evidence that the pyramid had undoubtedly been destroyed by a very forceful blast. You're going way, way before Civil War. So what would be forceful enough to do that? So while this is extremely doubtful, the author says, it does give the reader an idea of the lore that surrounded the area even before the battle. And another legend, always known for being infested with snakes, apparently. The legend says that one gigantic snake in particular eluded the local hunters for many years, and they were never able to capture or kill him. And he was allegedly nicknamed the Devil. Thus, the Devil's Den being haunted long before the battle itself.
There's always stories like that. It's
so
fascinating.
War whoop, Jack. Is that what you heard?
Yeah, like listen, it sounded like, because the rebel yell is that they took it from the Native American warriors.
Yeah.
So because they would yip and yap and scare their enemies. So that's why the Confederates adopted the rebel, they called it the rebel yell.
Yes.
But it was really, before that, it was the Native American yell.
Right. And they
so
called it
I'm thinking, well, it was the rebel yell, but I was right there on the border of the Triangular Field and Devil's Den. I was right there. That's where I was.
And you're yipping and
yipping and all that. And I'm thinking, well, it was definitely human.
Oh yeah.
So it wasn't an animal, but it could have easily been Native Americans and not rebel soldiers.
No, because there were wars. Sorry, Amelia, that happened way before. You go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we're talking about hearing soldiers' voices, hearing footsteps. Did you hear anything on the dark side?
No.
Good.
I've never encountered anything dark in Gettysburg. Listen, it depends how you define dark. I mean, it's a heavy place. A lot of carnage. Many thousands of people died there, et cetera, et cetera. I've always felt incredibly comfortable at Gettysburg, and because I think, for me, going into it, you kind of, at least I'm always thinking soldiers, because I'm thinking Gettysburg. So, and so to me, it's like, I kind of know what we're dealing with, right? Unless I'm being fooled. But we've never had anything bad happen to anyone who was ever there. There would be emotional moments where people would break down, they'd cry, because they'd feel the sadness and I mean, basically, these people are dying, right? So you're feeling that, right? You're maybe feeling their last moments, missing your mother, missing your family. So you feel those emotions, but never anything negative. Now, one of the problems they have at Gettysburg, and that's why they shut it down at night, because you'd have these locals come in, kids, and they'd bring out the pentagrams and everything else, and they would try to do these not so great rituals, and they really don't. I think that's so horrible to do, especially, it's horrible to do anyway, but on this ground that's hollowed ground.
That's where they want to do it, because
Yes.
they feel that they'll be able to bring something forward, which is awful, because then they can create an attachment for a spirit that's there that never had that attachment.
Yeah, you don't know
So-
what you're conjuring up, and it can be an
No.
elemental. It could be a shadow entity.
Well,
I don't know. I don't
are
know.
everywhere.
Yeah,
but-
I can't define those things. I dare not, because I have no idea what they are or not.
No, I was just curious if you heard anything, because that is a horrible place. The emotion, the tears, and the outpouring of grief. But sometimes I think when people go there and they're paying their respects, they're leaving a love imprint energy behind as well.
That is exactly what happens at Gettysburg. So you have, yes, it was a horrible moment. 160 some, how? Oh my God, I can't even. 170 years, whatever it was.
63, wasn't it?
So but people go there and pay their respects, and they respect the soldiers, and they honor their sacrifice, and the park rangers do a phenomenal job in the work that they do to do honor them.
They're caretakers, essentially.
They are caretakers, and we're preserving this hallowed ground for them. You have the cemetery, and you have all these, amazing, and people can go and remember, and so you're basically reminding people of them, who they were, and the soldiers want to be known. That's one of the things that would happen, is that you get a name, you get a first name. One of the coolest thing that I've ever heard of in Gettysburg, and I heard this, and but I didn't get this EVP, but I heard it. People were at the part of they call it the high water mark of the Confederacy during Pickett's charge, and this is the furthest they got to breaking the Union line in the center. They never did, but this is where General Armistead, and some of his men got to this point. So there's a plaque there that says the high water mark. So there were some people there doing EVP, and they were asking questions, and they got an EVP response. And there's a guy on it in a very monotone voice saying, "I knew George Pickett."
Wow, that's huge.
I have goosebumps all over my body right now.
Oh yeah.
I knew George Pickett.
And that's an intelligent, again.
I know,
intelligent,
right.
That's
I mean, they're talking about it like, "Who are you? What This is Pickett's charge. This is where Pickett's charge happened."
Yeah, he doesn't sound like he's stuck there either.
No, he's like, "I knew George Pickett."
Wow.
Yeah, very intelligent
right now. That's like a Class A EVP. Not to mention it's so relevant.
And it is. And you see what happens when you ask intelligent questions. Like I would do a lot of tours, and I would represent certain locations as their paranormal advisor. And I would teach people how to do it. I would say, "You're in this location, take a look around. You know the history, because I've just told you the history. Look at the photos, or look at, this would be the room that I explained to you. Ask questions based on that, because if a spirit is there in visitation, they're going to expect intelligent answers. If a spirit does not know they're dead, they're going to look at you and you say, 'Is there anybody here?' And they're standing in front of you going, 'What? Hello?'" Right? So you're in there, you know the history, you're asking intelligent questions, and therefore you're getting an intelligent response.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty relevant. That was, "I knew George Pickett." I mean,
that's like,
well, crud. That's pretty impressive.
That's what I'm saying. I'll never forget hearing that. My hair on my body stood up. I mean, it was just incredible. You also heard but we heard one time we got voices that were children. And again, who knows why they're there?
They could have run out
they were
to the
there
field for their parents, their dads, especially if you have farmhouses. They could have left home to look for their fathers.
Boy,
it
could have been just kids who lived and died in Gettysburg.
Yeah,
there were still fires. I mean, everything that all the trimmings that that come with the 1800s, house fires, disease, right?
What?
Fever.
Thank you for saying that. You were looking at maybe events outside of the war. If
Right.
Jenny Wade was said to be the only civilian casualty, then how much came before and how much came after? Everything that you've said, everything you've just mentioned, these are still going to be there, whether they may not even recognize the battle.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've encountered spirits who share literally the same space as other spirits, but they're sharing a different time.
Right.
Like they're in a different time. They don't even acknowledge the other things going on in the location. They're only present in their time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. If you took the battle away,
yes,
Gettysburg is still a town that was founded in, I don't know, offhand, but it had to be late 17 or early 1800s.
Yes.
So
well, the battle, I think, was
probably
1863.
1700s. And so you take the battle away and it's still a haunted town.
Oh, yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
Have you?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, have you ever been to Battleship Cove in Massachusetts?
No.
Okay. It's a naval museum, and there's ships in the water that you can tour. And
Cool.
There's a museum, and it's in Fall River, which means it's a hop, skip, and a jump away from Lizzie Borden's house.
No. Are they
a short drive to Salem?
Revolutionary War boats or?
They not revolutionary. They are naval, like the USS Massachusetts is there. This is from World War I and World War II. I went there just because I didn't even know it was there. It was by accident. I was going to Lizzie Borden's house, and we were super, super early. A friend of mine would go to Boston for just like, I love Massachusetts. It's my favorite state. I feel at home when I go there. And we had time to kill, and I looked on my phone, what's nearby? And this was nearby. And I'm like, wait a minute, we need to go. At the time, the museum to get on was closed, but I was able to walk along the dock, and I picked up a lot of voices from very far away. Just me hearing soldiers calling out, and I was able to verify one of them. So,
this is a good comment. This might be what you're... Maybe the residual of the children. There were many wives of soldiers that travel with them, with their children. I can't imagine this
I can't either.
The carnage that was experienced there.
That could be the trauma.
Where would the kids be? Like, I know in Bull Run, the Battle of Bull Run, because it was the first Bull Run, people from DC area went with picnic baskets to watch the battle because they had no idea what they were getting into. And they literally had to run for their lives because the Union Army was overrun. But like they were going to, it was like a spectator sport. I'd never heard of
people used to go to public
bringing their wives and children with them. I've never heard that.
No, that's crazy. Well, we're at the top of the hour already. And, I love talking about Gettysburg. And
it's a great place.
It really is. She says wives are acting as nurses.
Oh. I believe that. Yeah.
I could see that as well.
Yeah.
You know,
especially to help with the blood loss and pull them in away from the field.
Mm. Well, I mean, collecting belongings, you know.
Yeah.
It was a very sad event in American history, and it was a very pivotal event at the same time that altered the course of the history of the United States at that time. Mm-hmm. And it's why it is what it is. And again, we go back to, you know, having the utmost respect because it was sheer carnage, and it was a sad event. War is never good. And I ask just that those who go to investigate, you know, are respectful. You know, you guys are respectful, and I love that. You have to be. You know, don't go in there demanding this or that, and you know, who are you to demand anything? And those, I've heard many researchers say that we are nobody to go in there and start demanding things. You know, so treat these guys with respect because they gave up everything, literally their lives, everything for the life you have today. That's all our veterans. That's all of our, you know, are lost and so on. So what do you have? What do you have coming on, Jack? What's going on? What's going on? Tell us.
Oh, what's going on?
Promote.
Well, you and I are kind of working on something cool. And then, you know, I know we kind of talked about it on the show a little bit, but yeah, projects, getting the film going for the script, the Western that we're doing.
Oh, good.
You're working on a couple other scripts. We got some good stuff going on. Really excited about the possibilities with your folks. And just, you know, again, you know, you talk about fascinating subjects. And we're on here and we're always talking about really cool things. You know, ghosts, does consciousness survive death? Everyone loves talking about that.
Yes.
But also the Knights Templar and, you know, like, you know,
and some
Jesus and Mary Magdalene and what's going on, right? The Da Vinci Code. So like there's these mysteries in life and they're just fascinating. You can talk about them all day and night. And I'm just feel fortunate to be involved in doing these kinds of projects. And it was an honor to do the Gettysburg book. It really was.
Yes.
It was my first book. It was a while back. And so, but I would really consider maybe updating it and republishing it. It was published by Llewellyn worldwide, and they for 10 years or so, it was everywhere, available everywhere, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, certainly. But I got the rights back to it after a decade. And so right now you might be able to find some used copies, but I would have to republish it again or do it on my own to self-publish with what I would probably add new content.
I'm so happy you wrote it.
I'm happy I wrote it.
Yeah,
Amelia.
I'm
I really
to
am,
be a
because
part
it
of
was
this
something I really wanted to do.
Absolutely. Maybe you were there.
Would you have done anything different, or were you happy with the way it went?
I love the way it turned out. And I think, again, if I had to bring it out again, put it out again, I would add content. I would put interviews with reenactors in there. I would interview more townspeople. I would go back myself with people and do serious investigations.
Sounds like a part two.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Ghost Soldiers of Gettysburg too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe dig into the indigenous part of things a little bit, because it sure makes you wonder that kind of carnage, and it had a war there before.
Pre and post.
Is it tainted? Is the energy there? Is this what this place is about now?
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you found that. I'd love to be able to find enough information on that to actually put a couple chapters in, you know.
I find things, Jack. That's what I do.
I know you do. I do not doubt you when it comes to. I know you're going to find it. I totally believe that you will.
I think you should do the volume and reintroduce it at the same time, first and second.
I would. It's a consideration. We got so much going on right now, as you know. It's hard. And writing a book is like writing a book. It's hard. Is a tedious.
That's why I haven't
task.
done it. No, it takes a special kind of person, and I'm just honored to be a part of the conversation and learn more.
Well, thank you, and I'm honored to be on the show. So I really appreciate just to be able to sit and talk with you guys. I love it.
Anytime.
I love having you.
Yes, something else you want to talk about? Just let me know.
We'll figure it out. We'll come up with some cool stuff.
Go to Fall Rivers. Do the whole Massachusetts thing. I'd love to see your take.
Could do Salem too.
Well, I would
Fall
love
River,
to see
Lizzie
your
Borden,
take.
Salem.
I would love to see your take in Salem, because you have the Witch's House, you have the courthouse there, you have Hawthorne House,
you got Lexington and Concord.
There's so much there on one strip, and you could tell. You would tell such a great story. Seriously.
Yeah, I just got to be able to research it and document it.
And if you go to and there's Edgar Allan Poe statues everywhere, but if you go to the city of Boston, you'll be able to go to the cemetery where Mother Goose is and Paul Revere.
Yes,
and the people
been to that one.
Yeah,
I lived in Boston for
awesome?
4 years. I went to school up there.
My favorite city. I'm so jealous.
Boston is.
I love Boston.
An amazing town.
Isn't it? And the food's amazing. The people are amazing. Nobody's from Boston in Boston. They're all from different.
No, the history there is
That
amazing.
being said, I do have to sign off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
As much
you.
as I'd love to talk about food in Boston, I guess I can't do it now. We're gonna get
Enjoy your
fired.
weekend. I sent you a couple things in Messenger.
Okay, excellent. Thank you
Bye,
again
Jack.
so
Pleasure.
much, guys. I so appreciate it.
No,
And I'll
thank
be in
you.
touch too because I have an idea. So
Okay. Sounds
okay.
good.
All
Sounds
right,
great.
Good
Good
night.
night.
All right. Good night, guys. Bye.
Well, we have definitely come to the end of another fantastic segment with something that's very, very near and dear. And I'm glad that we got to really delve into it and talk about it. So, big thank you to Jack Roth. Keep looking for him. He's got so many things on the go, a lot of great conversation. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee for sponsoring our show tonight and every night. Big thank you to Justin Snicker. Big thank you to Steve McGinnis. Thank you. Thank you. Next week, basically, we are amongst friends yet again, but this time colleagues as well. So Wednesday night, we're going to welcome the return of Carrie Lynn Shellhorn. She is the host of Spirit Switchboard here at UPRN, and she is a very, very dear friend of mine and has been for a whole lot of years. And it's going to be a real laid back night of parlay and spooky stuff and haunted experiences. And we have Laura Lee Potvin, another good friend, and she's got Angel Rock and she's got Foot at the End of the Bed. That's right on before us.
Great
Every
show.
Thursday night, Foot at the End of the Bed. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And Thursday, for the very first time, is another fellow host of the Orion Effect, Ed Odell. And it's going to be fun. You guys will often see Ed pop into the chat room and just tip of the hat. And he's just a great guy, and he's got a lot of great stories. I will actually be doing his show this coming Sunday night at 7 p.m. I believe it will be Eastern. And then I'm going to be doing a show 4 o'clock tomorrow, and it's only going to stream on Rumble because it's not our show. So, but we like to give little snippets of stuff, so it will be over on Rumble. And I've been asked about this so many times. We touched on it yesterday, which is Dogman, but this is going to be centered around Canadian content. I might throw in like an American thing in there, of course, but this is going to be structured around Canadian content. And what do you do when you realize that you don't live in one, but maybe two places that have a lot of sort of sightings? And here we don't call them dogmen, we call them loup-garou. And it goes back for hundreds of years. And there's a whole story amongst a lot of it. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And that's going to be on the Paranormal Heart podcast. So again, I get to go to one place with it, and it will go, the recording will go live on Tuesday, 6 p.m. on all of the UPRN sites for you guys to all see it. Yes, with Cat Ward.
Oh, Cat Ward. I do that all the time to her.
I know.
Forgive me, Cat.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you all have a terrific weekend, and we will see you next week. Good night.